On the pristine streets of Cedar Falls, a man of immense power was on his daily run. He was disciplined, focused, and utterly at peace. But two local cops saw only a problem. They were about to make the biggest mistake of their careers, and they had no idea who they were dealing with. The peace of the afternoon was torn apart by the violent squeal of tires. A Cedar Falls police pursuit SUV fishtailed to a stop on Redwood Terrace, blocking the jogger's path. Two officers emerged. The driver, Evan Riley, was a rookie. His face was a nervous mix of youth and apprehension. His partner, Officer Rick Coleman, stepped out like a man spoiling for a fight. He was a thick, hardened cop with a permanent scowl that dared the world to challenge him. "Hey, you on the sidewalk. Freeze!" Riley shouted, his voice cracking as he tried to sound intimidating. The jogger, Alastair Pierce, slowed to a graceful stop. He was a powerfully built man in his mid-50s, standing at a lean 6 feet 4 inches. A sharp Marine-style haircut was framed by graying temples. He calmly removed his earbuds, pausing a biography on General Patton, and faced him not with fear, but with a detached professional interest. "Good afternoon, officers. Is there an issue?" His voice was calm and deep, a leader's voice used to giving orders, not taking them. Officer Coleman swaggered forward, deliberately stepping into Pierce's personal space. "Here we go," Coleman thought, a familiar sneer forming in his mind. Another one who thinks he owns a place. With a flick of his thumb, he unfastened the strap on his holster. The soft click echoed in the quiet air, a sound more menacing than any shout. He let his eyes perform a slow, demeaning crawl from Pierce's worn running shoes up the simple gray sweatsuit to his face, as if inspecting a piece of property he found offensive. "We got a report," Coleman drawled, his voice dripping with condescension. "Concerned party reported a suspicious man casing the homes around here." He let a nasty smirk spread across his face. And wouldn't you know it, you matched the description to a T. The click, the smirk, the ugly way he spat out that last word. Pierce knew this had nothing to do with jogging. He had seen that same entitled arrogance in the eyes of petty warlords halfway across the globe. It was the oldest, foulest script in history. But decades of command had built a fortress of discipline within him, and he let the insult crumble against its walls. "What is your business here?" Coleman demanded, abandoning any semblance of protocol. The question was an accusation. "Where do you live?" "I am on my afternoon run, officer," Pierce answered, his tone still perfectly level, though it now required immense effort. "I live right down the street." He nodded his chin. "Number 112, Redwood Terrace, the stone-faced manor right there." Coleman glanced at the magnificent home with its perfectly manicured grounds, then back at Pierce. He let out a short, disgusting bark of a laugh, his face twisting with contempt. "That house? A guy like you," he sneered. "Don't play me for a fool. Let me guess. You mow the lawn, take out the trash, maybe. Now that I believe." A coil of white-hot rage tightened in Pierce's gut. He wanted to break this arrogant punk, to teach him what real authority felt like. But a general doesn't engage in street brawls. He dictates the time and place of every battle. And this was not the place. Not yet. He crushed the anger, replacing it with ice. His voice, when he spoke, was glacial. "Officer, your assumptions are baseless and unprofessional. I am prepared to provide my identification to verify my residence." "Oh, listen to Mr. Unprofessional here," Riley chirped, eager to impress his partner. "We have the right to stop anyone acting suspicious, and you, pal, are setting off all the alarms. Your badge numbers," Pierce stated flatly. "It wasn't a request. It was a demand. Provide them now." "Camola, August 19th, 2025, 9:15. The command seemed to short-circuit Coleman's brain. He lunged forward, his face inches from Pierce's. You don't demand a damn thing from us. Old man," he spat. "We ask the questions. You got a rap sheet? You carrying anything? Drugs? Weapons?" "I have no legal requirement to answer unfounded and insulting questions," Pierce replied, his voice now stripped of all emotion. He was no longer a civilian. He was an officer assessing a threat. "No requirement?" Coleman snarled. "I'll give you a requirement." Without warning, He shoved Pierce in the chest with both hands. The attack was sudden and vicious. Pierce staggered back, his Marine Corps Force Recon training screaming at him to react. He could have broken a man's arm in a single efficient motion, but he knew the rules on American soil. Resisting cops, even rogue ones, was a war you always lost. It was the excuse they were praying for. "Hey, what in the hell do you think you're doing?" Pierce roared, his self-control finally breaking under the assault. "You dare raise your voice to us?" Riley yelled, seeing his chance. They swarmed him like a pack of dogs. Pierce made the split-second tactical decision to go limp and not resist. He let their clumsy, brutal force overwhelm him. The world spun and his body slammed onto the hard cobblestone, sending a shock of pain up his spine. Coleman's triumphant voice snarled in his ear. "Face down, hands behind your head now." A knee dug viciously into the small of his back, stealing the air from his lungs. The sharp smell of asphalt filled Pierce's nostrils. He felt the cold steel of handcuffs biting into his wrists, ratcheted so brutally tight that the metal broke his skin. From the corner of his eye, he could see curtains parting in the magnificent houses around him. He saw the glint of at least 3 smartphones broadcasting his humiliation for the world to see. "Give us your name," Riley grunted, his breath sour as he leaned in close. "Stop playing stupid." For a long moment, Pierce lay still, his cheek pressed against the cold stone. He gathered his breath. He focused his will, and then he spoke. His voice was not the voice of a man beaten on the pavement. It was sharp, clear, and carried an absolute authority that had nothing to do with his physical position. It was the voice of command, a voice that had silenced rooms and directed armies. "Before I state my name," Pierce said, each word a chip of ice, "you both need to understand the situation. Every action you have taken, the illegal stop, the use of excessive force, your frankly racist assumptions, has been documented." He let the words hang in the chilling air. "Not just on your body cams. It has also been captured by no fewer than 4 high-def security systems on this street. Systems owned by my neighbors. People who know me very well. And I can assure you," he finished, his voice dropping to a low promise that made both cops flinch, "the price for this is your careers." A flicker of Coleman's bravado sputtered back to life, a weak flame in a storm of dawning fear. "Is that supposed to be a threat?" he growled, but his voice trembled. "Who the hell do you think you are? Some kind of attorney?" "Something far more consequential," Pierce replied from the pavement, his voice like a steel blade. "Now, I am giving you a direct order. You will contact your shift commander, Lieutenant Hayes. You will state your location on Redwood Terrace, and you will inform him that you have just illegally detained a man named Alastair Pierce." He let the order sink in. "And then you will tell him," he added with chilling precision, "that he needs to brace for a conversation with a man he cannot afford to anger." The unshakable confidence in Pierce's tone was terrifying. Coleman and Riley exchanged a wide-eyed, frantic look. This wasn't right. The name Alastair Pierce meant nothing to them, but the man pinned to the ground radiated more power than their badges ever could. Something was terribly wrong. "What is this? What's your game?" Riley stammered, his voice cracking into a whisper. "This is not a game, officer," Pierce said. "This is my final piece of professional advice. Make that call before the hole you are digging for yourselves becomes a grave." Riley looked at Coleman for direction, but the older cop was paralyzed, his face a mask of confusion and rising dread. With a hand that shook uncontrollably, Riley fumbled for the radio on his shoulder. "Dispatch, this is Unit 7 Charlie," he choked out. "Get me Lieutenant Hayes on the line." After a burst of static, he spoke again. "Lieutenant, this is Riley. We're on Redwood Terrace. We have a suspect in custody. The individual, he identifies as Alastair Pierce." A tense, crackling silence filled the air. Then an utterly terrified voice shrieked from the radio, so loud it distorted the speaker. "What? Pierce? Say that name again. Riley, are you insane?" The voice paused and continued, a low, guttural growl of pure panic. "General Alastair Pierce? My God, son, do you have any idea whose life you just ruined? You stay exactly where you are. Do not lay another finger on him. I'm coming, and if that man has so much as a scratch on him, will all be answering to the Department of Defense. The transmission ended, leaving a deafening silence. Riley and Coleman stood frozen, the color draining from their faces, leaving them a pasty, sickly white. They looked at each other in sheer horror, their eyes finally falling on the man they had assaulted. A wave of sickening, soul-crushing realization washed over them. You are that Alistair Pierce," Coleman whispered, his voice trembling with a disbelief that bordered on awe. "The general?" Pierce said nothing. He simply waited. His patience was more menacing than any threat he could make. The main act, he knew, was about to begin. Less than 3 minutes later, the street was filled with the scream of sirens. 2 more patrol cars and a black unmarked SUV skidded to a stop. The SUV's door flew open, and Police Chief Garrett burst out, his face a portrait of pure panic. Behind him, Lieutenant Hayes looked as if he was about to vomit on the pristine lawn. Ignoring his own men, Chief Garrett ran directly to where Pierce lay on the ground. "General Pierce," the chief cried out, his voice shaking with horror. "My God, what has happened here?" He spun on his lieutenant. "Hayes, what are you waiting for? Get those cuffs off the general this instant." A trembling Hayes fumbled with the keys and hastily unlocked the handcuffs. Coleman and Riley stood off to the side, heads bowed, shivering as if caught in a blizzard. Their careers were over. They knew it. Chief Garrett personally helped Pierce to his feet, trying to brush the dirt from his sweatsuit with a shaking hand. "General, I am so profoundly sorry. There are no words to describe this disgraceful, unacceptable conduct." Pierce looked directly into the chief's desperate eyes. His own were as hard and unforgiving as granite. "Chief Garrett," he said, his voice sharp despite his weariness, "your apologies are for your own benefit, not for mine. You have a great deal of explaining to do, not to me, but to the community you've sworn an oath to protect." He lifted a steady, commanding finger and pointed directly at Coleman and Riley, who flinched as if he had aimed a weapon. "Those 2 men did more than display a lack of professionalism," Pierce stated, his voice cutting through the air. "They demonstrated a flagrant abuse of their authority and a sickening, overt racism." He locked his gaze back onto the chief. "Tell me, Chief," he asked, his voice dangerously quiet, "is this the standard you accept from the Cedar Falls police?" Chief Garrett's face went white. A bead of cold sweat trickled down his temple. He turned, and a terrible, controlled fury radiated from him as he faced his 2 disgraced officers. "Coleman, Riley, what in God's name did you do?" he roared, the sound echoing down the manicured street. "You didn't just assault a citizen. You put your hands on a general in the United States Marine Corps. You have spat on the honor of this badge." He didn't wait for them to answer. He whirled on his lieutenant. "Hayes!" "Sir, you will personally escort these 2 to the station," he commanded, his voice like cracking stone. "Take their statements, confiscate their weapons, seize their credentials. They are on indefinite unpaid suspension. Effective immediately. I want the full incident report on my desk by 800 hours. I am personally walking it into the district attorney's office tomorrow morning. This will be pursued with extreme prejudice. No deals, no cover-ups. Is that understood?" "Yes, Chief." 2 other officers stepped forward to carry out the humiliating ritual. The audience of neighbors watched in stunned silence as Coleman and Riley were systematically dismantled. They heard the crisp rip of Velcro as their duty belts were unfastened. They heard the heavy, final click as their sidearms were removed and secured. And at last, they heard the quiet metallic scrape as their badges were unpinned from their chests. They stood there disarmed and impotent, shivering in the cool air as their careers dissolved in front of everyone. As the 2 men were led, speechless and ashen-faced, to a patrol car, Chief Garrett turned back to Pierce, his face a mask of utter remorse. "General, again, on behalf of this entire department, I cannot say how sorry I am for this negligence." Pierce regarded the man for a long moment, his sharp, analytical gaze seeming to see straight into the chief's soul. "Chief Garrett," he said slowly, his voice firm, "apologies are not sufficient. They never are." He let that statement sink in. "I don't want your apologies. I want action. I want to see meaningful change in how you recruit, how you train, and how you supervise your officers. I want decency and respect to be the absolute, unbreakable rule for every single citizen in this community." He looked past the chief toward his own home. "And make no mistake, as a citizen of this community, I will be watching every single step of the way." He paused. "Now, if you'll excuse me, Chief, it's been a very long day." Without another word, General Pierce turned and began the short walk to his house. As he approached, the crowd of neighbors parted silently. Their faces were no longer filled with fear or pity, but with a deep and undeniable respect. Several of the older men in the crowd, men who understood exactly what they had just witnessed, gave him a slow, deliberate nod. Justice had been delivered right here on their street for all to see.